People are filing in here. Hi, everybody. It's Leo Sarkissian. Glad to have you with us and excited about the folks with us today that are going to do a session on self-direction. And we promoted it so that more and more people can hear about it, and they can also, they'll share with you how you can find out about other training that's going on. But they agreed to do an abbreviated version. I want to do one update for you on COVID. I'm not going to use any slides. I'm just going to use their slides today. But first, let me introduce our guests, even though people are still coming in. And I'm trying to see, well, I'll go from my left. How's that? Ed Wilson, Jennifer Benoit, Amy Nazaire, and Pam. Did Pam get in? Because I stepped out for a minute. Pam Hickey. So she'll be here any minute. And boy, we've got Jennifer coming in twice. So that's, or another Jennifer Benoit. Who knows, right? But we'll also be joined by Pam Hickey soon. And these are our regional managers for self-determination services at the Department of Developmental Services. So, there's Pam. Why don't you give them a wave? Okay, cool. So when they are responsible for the respective regions, and then they also work with the area offices in addition to with constituents and families to advance self-determination and self-direction. So today's session, I mean, we'll have questions later in the session, but I want them to have a chance to give as much of a presentation, given that it's bridged anyway to fit in to the weekly webinar system we have here. But I also want to give you an update on COVID, and just it was about, we reported about 758 or 760 in the last session, which EOHHS, DPH have kindly agreed to post numbers more often, which again, I want to thank them for. I thanked them last week, and I just want to thank them again for doing that, because we had gone to a monthly promotion. So it has gone up again, not as drastically as it had earlier during the Omicron, I guess we should call it, pandemic number 3, right? And now it's under 200 new cases that are reported in the community provider system. There's 72 cases in the state ops system. And again, I've said in the past, in the community, we don't hear about the staff numbers. It's too complicated, I guess, to collect them. But we do know there's 409 cases at the staff operated residences. So they're under the gun, I'm sure, in terms of trying to figure out staffing and all that, as are provider homes, needless to say. And these are all about the homes, small congregate homes. In addition, there's 13 cases at Rentham. So, and you have to remember the state institutions, one of them was at 50-something% Hogan in the first phase, and Rentham was closer, somewhere between 33 and 38% cases. So, but, so it's, and on our world, in a congregate home world, which is closer to home, because there's fewer people in homes, there's a lower percentage. It was in the 20s, approaching 27% now with Omicron in terms of impact. But the good news is it's ebbing down, and we're hoping we'll see it disappear, right, along with the rest of us. But I don't know about you, but I know so many people now that happen to have gotten Omicron. It seems like it's all around us. So hopefully we'll get through this healthy and safe for all our constituents, ourselves, and our friends and family and staff. So anyway, I'm really pleased. I'm going to, I've introduced them already, but I'm going to introduce them one more time. Ed, we'll start with Ed again on the left, my left. Ed Wilson.
Hi, everybody.
Jennifer Benoit.
Hi, I'm Jen.
Amy Nazaire, and Pam Hickey, and they're the regional managers for self-determination. And I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint, and I'm going to get off the screen and mute myself so they can do the presentation. How's that? Let me share this, and we'll get it. Okay, and we'll get it going. All right. So, welcome, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the presentation, and look forward. Who would like to start the presentation?
I'll kick us off.
Okay. Thanks for having us, everybody. I'm Jen, like Leo said, and I'm the regional manager for the Metro region. As Leo said, we all do work very closely with our area offices. Some of us might even be a familiar face to you guys. We may have talked before, but we work very closely with the area offices. So we're happy to talk more in detail. If you had more questions, more about specifics afterwards, we can connect with you. We will take questions at the end. It's tough to talk to specifics in a large crowd, so maybe more overall overview questions might be helpful. But we're certainly happy to do that. We often say this is a multi-layered conversation. There's a lot of information and a lot of details, so I think it's nice to kind of take it slow and take it in pieces, if you will. So maybe we'll just, Leo, ask you to advance the slides when we're ready. Thanks for sharing and taking care of the technology. So we like to kick off the presentation with this slide. It's a nice collage of many faces of self-direction. And these folks were more than happy to share their pictures, knowing that we were going to be using it in presentations. I'll say that there's a wide variety of levels of support with just the folks that you see on here. Never mind we have almost a little over 1,800 people enrolled right now. Ed will share that with you in a few minutes, but many different pieces that are put together in levels of support. Can go on to the next one.
So just a little history on self-directed services, so the Real Lives Law was passed in 2014. And the Real Lives Law has really aided us in being able to help provide structure and growth for self-directed services. The department is now mandated to make sure that everybody, all individuals and families are receiving information about self-direction, outreach, and training. It's also established an advisory board. There's about 22 folks, about 11 or 12 of them are parents or participants who are utilizing self-directed services, and then the other half of the other group are government folks from a variety of different agencies, from DPPC to the commissioner, and so on. So when it comes to self-directed services, just a little bit, the participant-directed program, or what we now call the participant-directed program, started in the late 90s, early 2000s with a grant, with began a pilot and started with a grant back in the 90s, and through that pilot that they had developed, that pilot was responsible for really what the participant-directed program has become today. Agency with Choice Services began in 2010 with an RFR, and there was another one back in 2018. So just a little bit, the Real Lives Law also provided structure from the area offices all the way to central office. So now we have liaisons in each of the area offices. Those are folks within the area offices who know a little bit and can answer some questions about the differences between the participant-directed program and agency with choice. And then you have the regional managers. And then we have Liz Sandblom at central office, who's the central office lead for self-direction. So it really has provided an ability for us to be able to have growth and structure at all levels of the department. And that the Self-Direction Advisory Board helps us to promote self-directed services statewide. You want to advance the slide? So now when we're talking about services that the Department of Developmental Services office, we're talking about services now on a continuum, right? So you have traditional agency services there on the left, agency with choice kind of in the middle, and the participant-directed program. It's important to understand that self-directed services are not new services. We've been providing home supports and day supports and respite and those kinds of services for many, many years. What is new about self-directed services is how these services are delivered to the participant and or their family. As you work down this continuum from traditional to the participant-directed program, you see their freedom, authority, responsibility, and control. So as you go from traditional to the participant-directed program, you have an increased capacity to be able to customize and control and make decisions and design services that are reflective of who your sons and daughters are, but at the same time, there's increase in responsibility that has to be taken with regard to the management and administration of the services. It really is, in my opinion, self-directed services, and the reason I was attracted and have gotten involved with them is because I really do feel it's the best partnership that DDS has developed between a very large bureaucracy who has to have accountability over public dollars, but at the same time be able to provide individuals and families real authority over a budget and real control and design over their services. And so in that regard, I think it's a really good partnership that's been developed. Next slide. So I'm sure that most folks on the call are all familiar with traditional services. Those are services that the Department of Developmental Services contracts with any number of 250 or 300 private nonprofit organizations across the state to provide anything from 24-hour group homes to supported employment services and so on. And because those agencies that are providing those services hold the contract with the department and have responsibility for providing those services, then they also, those agencies have the control over being able to answer these questions. The agencies are the ones who decide who they're going to hire, what services they're going to provide, where the services will be located, when the services will begin and end in terms of the times, you know, from usually day programs 8:30 to 3 or so, and how those services will best meet the needs. But in self-directed services, it's the participant and the family who are able to answer these questions. Participants and families can decide who they're going to hire. You know, participants and families can decide what it is that the person is going to be able to do during the course of the week or the month, whether they're going to be working or volunteering or engaged in recreational activities and so on. And it's the participant and the family together who decide where that person, you know, where is that person going to spend their time? You know, are they going to be at home, at work, at the gym? And then most interestingly, when, you know, if these services are maximally flexible. So if your son or daughter wants to get up and doesn't want to start their day till 10 in the morning and work until 6, that's perfectly fine. If folks are a night owl and they want to work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., no problem. These services are maximally flexible to be able to meet whatever the schedule that folks might have. And these the other thing about these services is they're meant to be able to be utilized in conjunction with traditional services, right? So we have some families who are just self-directing on Fridays. You know, it's not all in or all out when it comes to self-directed services and traditional services. We have had some folks going to day programs and receiving home supports. We've had people who are in residential services and who are self-directing portions of their day. These services are able to be utilized with, in conjunction with personal care attendants, with adult family care services, and so on. So they're really designed to be maximally flexible in terms of how they're utilized and to be able to be paired up and kind of interchangeable with traditional services. And then certainly you have the capacity to best decide how these services will meet your son or daughter's needs. And what goals that they have set and you want them to accomplish. So the real difference between traditional services and self-directed services lies in who answers these questions: who, what, where, when, and how. In traditional services, it's the agency, but in self-directed services, it's the family and the participant. Next slide, please. So agency with choice. That's the first. From traditional services, that's the next stop on that continuum that we talked about. So agency with choice is kind of the middle. There's still an agency involved there. We call this the co-employment model. What does that mean? It means that families and individuals can recruit, select, or recommend workers to the agency that you believe are a good fit and who might work well for your son or daughter. The agency and agency with choice is also empowered to recruit folks on your behalf to work with your sons and daughters. So anyone whom you might proffer up to the agency, as a potential worker, the agency would be obligated to interview that person and to establish whether they meet the agency's qualifications for hiring. And also, those folks would be required to engage in training that all their employees are required to take. The primary responsibility for the individual and the family and agency with choice is the supervision of the employees, making sure that who you've hired is doing what you want them to do. The primary responsibility of the agency then is to kind of fulfill those back office functions, to make sure they're the ones issuing the paychecks, they're the ones engaged in helping with reimbursements. There's also an agency with choice, a navigator, a service navigator, who is a person who works within that particular organization, who can help seek generic resources, who can help with interviewing and recruiting employees, also can help with helping you to prepare for the individual service plan or ISP and so on. In agency with choice, there are three primary services. There's individual home supports, individual day supports, and something called flex funding. Individual day supports can also be utilized for employment supports in agency with choice. In this particular model, but also in the participant-directed program model, it's really important that there's clear communication. Clear communication and expectation when it comes to self-directed services is key. Developing that healthy form of communication is really important. In agency with choice, the agency typically develops an agreement that spells out what it is that agency is going to do and what their responsibilities are, and then there's an agreement that clearly spells out what you're responsible for. And that usually starts at the outset of services, so you have a kind of a touchstone to be able to go back to so that people can remain clear on whose responsibilities are whose. Why don't we continue forward with the next slide? So this is a story briefly about a man named John. I tell this story because I feel like the way this story developed is really important. So John's a fellow who, when he was turning 22 a few years back, his family kind of sat down to do kind of some person-centered planning for John and seek his input about what he'd like to be doing after he got out of school. And John had voiced three things: that he really enjoyed emergency services, he really loved motorcycles, as you can see, and he wanted to sell hot dogs at Fenway. John had spent some time at the Perkins School for the Blind and hadn't got some skills related to culinary arts, and he really wanted to put those to use. The family didn't see vocational opportunities either in motorcycles, although John likes to be on the back of them and goes to rallies still, and though he's seen positively by the emergency services, they didn't see a vocational opportunity. But they did take a hard look at what they might be able to do in terms of John selling hot dogs. Next slide, please. So what they did, the family did, is they opened up the Doghouse Dog for John. And this is something that John has been doing now for a number of years. And they got a community grant for the cart, to purchase the cart. And when it comes to, this is a small business. We've had several small businesses actually in self-directed services begin. It's important to understand that when it comes to self-directed services in small business, that the Department of Developmental Services can't pay for small business expenses. So we can't pay for the hot dogs, the relish, the mustard, or the rolls, but we can help to provide the support worker, who's that fellow at the bottom slide in the blue jacket, to be able to help John take inventory, clean the cart, purchase supplies, and set up the cart and help him to sell the hot dogs. He's not an employee of the business. He works to help aid John in teaching him the skills that he needs to be able to help operate the cart. And so John is a pretty impaired young man, and this is a really good story in terms of having taken into account John's interests and his skills and being able to put something together very flexibly for him to be able to meet his skills and his interests and his identity. And this wasn't done alone. The family did have to reach out to their own network of people and to be able to, it's a real community effort, you know, to be able to put something like this together. Next slide.
Thanks, Ed.
Yep.
So the next program that we're going to talk about is the participant-directed program. We have the agency with choice and the participant-directed program that fall under our self-directed services. And if you think back to the arrow slide, the continuum, the graphic that we put together, this would be the furthest to the right. So there is more autonomy, there is more authority and control over this, but I'll be very honest, there's also more responsibility and ownership and a little bit of startup time to get this going. So it kind of starts similarly. It starts with somebody's vision and goals and ideas, and you really work with your service coordinator or support broker interchangeably to really craft that, put that into some goals and some visions that you want to do, and translate that into what the week might look like or what those hours that the participant-directed program can offer. What's the most important? What's important not to do, as Ed said, to answer those 5 questions, the who, what, when, where, and why, and really come together as a team with your DDS support broker, the other people that are in your inner circle, your support network, to talk that out. And PDP, along with Agency with Choice, does offer flexibility to do that. In the participant-directed program, there is no agency involvement at all. There isn't a provider agency that supports that. It is you working very closely with your DDS service coordinator or support broker. Sorry about all the lingo, but we can use the names interchangeably sometimes. The technical term for somebody in PDP is a support broker. Oftentimes it's a service coordinator or another area office staff that has the expertise in self-direction. So you might hear both names used. So it would be the participant and family's responsibility and ownership and authority, like we said before, to really identify that person that you want to hire. Identify who that is, what characteristics they have, what training they need, what expertise is important to you, what kind of personality they have. Identify that person, write that job description, post that job, or recruit that person in a way that works best for you, and then do the interview and put that together. The DDS support broker will help you and kind of guide you through those steps, but it really is self-directed. It really is participant-led. The support broker will guide you as far as the ins and outs, and we have, sample job descriptions or templates on schedules to give you some ideas, but that's how that will start. The middle picture here is a story about a guy named Jeff who we share his story in other info sessions, and he identifies that this was important to him because he felt like in the past he'd be working with agencies and his staff would just show up. He said, I wanted to start to decide who that person is. I wanted to be in that role to be able to say, I work well, look, I think I'll work well with you. I want to hire you. I think I'll work well with you on Tuesdays. Will you work with me on Tuesdays? So to really be in the driver's seat for that. The top picture, I'll give you a quick example. I think we could talk about this all day, but when you have examples, it really helps you to formulate your thoughts and get some ideas going. But Brian is a gentleman at the top. He was just recently, this past Saturday, highlighted in our social media campaign under Self-Directed Saturdays. If you look that up, you can find more details about him. But he really wanted to work on independent living skills. And his family's very involved in his life, and he definitely receives support from his parents and his siblings, but wanted to live with some roommates, navigate his neighborhood using public transportation. And he was able to find people, recruit them, and hire them to do that. I'll say another example about Brian is we've been kind of thinking about and talking about assistive technology more and more in this world where we're doing a meeting and seminar on technology, but Brian's able to use that to help him manage the lighting in his apartment and help him to manage the shades and his cooking devices in his kitchen and prompting him with reminders and checking in. So just another kind of topic I think we're really trying to spend time on, because although technology can be complicated, it can also help us be a little bit more independent. It will never replace people. It will never replace that person contact or personal support that we get from each other and that folks need from providers. But there might be some gaps or some holes that can fill in, and Brian himself has shared how that's helped him. So we can flip to the next one. Much like Ed said about agency with choice, it's very important to communicate with your DDS support broker in the participant directed program. It is a partnership, it certainly is. The third piece of that partnership is Public Partnerships Limited. So they're our financial management company that we contract with to really manage the allocation. Participant and family aren't responsible for writing out checks and paying bills and taking care of that, but we contract with Public Partnerships to do that. The family and participant is responsible for kind of the being aware and helping making decisions about that and staying on top of that and kind of monitoring that, having conversations about it. But PPL takes on that back work. They kind of work as the HR department, if you would, if you did work with an agency. Once you identify that person that you want to hire, we do a formal application process with that provider. We send that through Public Partnerships, and that goes through the DPPC background check, the CORI background check, the national background check the references, and really make sure that their taxes and their forms are good to go. They then process all that tax information and manage the W-2s and 1099s and all the IRS needed requirements on the back end. And then as the participant or family member, you take on the responsibility for really managing that employee and setting up that schedule and training them in the things that you feel are important and crafting that schedule and making sure that they're really adhering to that and supervising them throughout that. And then once those hours are worked, you approve that they have worked those hours and they're meeting the needs of their employee duties. There's many more layers to that, but that's the very brief, as Leo said, it's kind of an abridged version that we're doing today. We can get into details in another conversation, and we welcome you to hop into another info session, which we'll share at the end as well. But communication is the key. This is a partnership really without the agency involved in the public, here I am with the acronym tongue tie, the PDP with PPL. And just there's a picture of Jacob there, and Jacob was a man who was interested in taking more classes and identified his really want and need to get out into the world a little bit more socially and really engage in that aspect. So he's identified certain things in PDP that he can work on. So can go to the next slide, and Amy's going to take it on with another great example of PDP.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So hi, everybody. It's great to see all of you. I see a few familiar names and faces. You might know me from my previous life as the Family Support Director in the Northeast for many years. And I've been now in this self-direction role for about 4 months. So it's very exciting. And so I wanted to talk about Sam and Max, who are two young men, twins, who are served by the Northeast, in the Northeast region in our Merrimack Valley office. And I love this story because it really shows how self-direction can work for people who have really significant physical care needs. So Sam and Max, they're in their early 20s and have mitochondrial disease and have significant, significant support needs. And I love this fact. So their mom learned about self-direction by going to one of these info sessions that Jen just referenced, and we are going to share more information at the end of the presentation about them. We offer them twice per month on a statewide level. And so Sam and Max's mom was able to learn about self-direction and connect with one of the support brokers in the Merrimack Valley office through one of those info sessions. And really, when the family was planning for transition for Sam and Max, when they were getting ready to leave school at 22, the mom and dad just felt like, you know, a traditional day program just isn't going to meet their needs. That they really, both on a social and community level, as well as on a physical care level, they need frequent repositioning. They need nursing pretty much around the clock. But they also wanted to have an active life. As you can see from these pictures, they definitely do have a very active life. So what mom did was, in working with the transition coordinator in Merrimack Valley, really came up with a vision, actually 2 separate visions, one for each, one for Sam, one for Max. They have similar needs, but not entirely the same. So they really, you know, identified what they wanted to do, what mom and dad would like to see them do, and came up with sort of a general plan, a general schedule, a kind of a curriculum, they called it. And for staffing, and again, this is another great example. Jen was talking earlier about recruiting staff. So in Sam and Max's case, they were able to connect with a nurse who had worked at their school program, who wanted to continue working with them. So she became, and still is, one of their 2 primary staff people. And because she's a nurse, it really makes all the difference. And then they also have a second staff person who also knew them at school. So they do have 2 solid staff that are employed by the family. Mom is Sam and Max's mother. I shouldn't say, I sound so bureaucratic when I say mom, excuse me. Sam and Max's mom is the employer of record. I think Jen referenced that a few minutes ago. So she technically hires and supervises the staff people on behalf of Sam and Max, who also have input as well. But they do all kinds of things. They're pre-COVID, we're really looking to try to do as much volunteer work as possible. They're always looking for free and low-cost activities. They do lots of range of motion, stretching. As you can see from these pictures, they love to swim, so they're often in the pool, at the beach. They love the casino. So that picture in the middle there is their birthday celebration at the casino. They love to be outdoors and active. So they're just out and about. Another thing, Marianne, the support broker, shared with me is that they love to be read to. So one of the things that they're really looking to do and maximize, and of course COVID kind of threw a wrench in this plan temporarily, but they're always looking for people to come to their home, to read to them. When weather's bad, they do things at home, they host, and again, you know, COVID's changed all that, but they frequently will have friends over to sit by the fire pit or just hang out at home. They stay in touch with friends that they went to school with. So it really has worked well for them. It's very individualized and really allows them to be out and about and active and working with familiar, trusted staff that they've known for many years. And they, because of their complex needs, also have some Mass Health funded nursing support. So they really have put together a nice package of supports and a nice curriculum that they're just working on, you know, throughout each day. So I love this example. I think it helped because I know oftentimes, and again, I've only been doing this for 4 months, but I've been with DDS for many years. I know families often ask, well, how can this work for somebody with more complex needs? Kind of like Ed was saying when he was talking about John's story, and it absolutely can. So I think, you know, Sam and Max and their family's story is a great example of that. So can move on.
So you've heard a lot of that. So the thing about self-directed services is it's different than traditional services in the sense that when we talk about self-directed services, we don't have a program. We can't unlock a door and you can't go and see the bricks and mortar of the program and see it. You know, the stories really are, you know, each person has their own interests, their own passions, and it's really how that person and their family puts that together that really can make magic happen. But one of the foundational things that's real important, especially for self-directed services, is being able to, you've heard us talk about having a vision, being able to have it, and many families perhaps sometimes find this the most difficult thing to try to craft, which is being able to think about what that schedule is going to look like Sunday through Saturday. What are the things that your son or daughter is involved with now? What are their interests, and who do they know? And that kind of thing. There are many different kinds of person-centered planning tools. There's Charting the Life course. Michael Small has a number of tools that one can use. I offer these up. These are 4 simple questions. Most families, you can take a look at these questions, and individuals, and can write a novel in about 10 minutes on these questions. What brings out the best in my son or daughter? What brings out the worst in my son or daughter? What are their needs? Listing all of them. I'll come back to that. And then what are the 3 most pressing needs? Because you've got to start somewhere, right? So when we talk about what brings out the best, that's what you want to have more of in your son or daughter's life. When we talk about what brings out the worst, that's what you want to have less of in your son or daughter's life. When we talk about what are their needs, when you're kind of engaging this as a vision, you want to be able to talk about what your son or daughter's human needs are, right? So being able to put things like needs a day program, needs a group home, needs a therapist, those aren't human needs. Those are the way the human service system addresses needs, but they're not necessarily human needs. Human needs are home and friendship and work. Maybe they need to grieve, those kinds of things. But when you're thinking about one's needs in terms of human needs, it also opens up the door of creativity in terms of how you're going to, how are we going to meet those needs? What will home look like for that person? What will it smell like in the kitchen? What will work look like for that person? Will they be working with other people? Will they be standing? Will they be sitting? You really are able to, when you're thinking about your sons and daughters' needs, and not necessarily day programs in group homes, because those are models. We have those services. We know what they look like, but this is the capacity to be able to really individualize for your sons and daughters what it is their needs are and how you can meet them and meet them flexibly. And then lastly, what are the 3 most pressing needs? Where do you want to begin? What's important to you? Now, what's important about being able to answer these questions and write them down is that it is important to be able to articulate what it is that's important to your son or daughter and to your family, and be able to communicate that concisely to the Department of Developmental Services, to the local area office. So in a way, some families have utilized the answering of these questions as kind of their own personal assessment. Here's what, and you're not going to put anything, you're not going to answer these questions, and you're not going to put anything you don't want to share, This really comes from you and from your son or daughter. But it is an opportunity to be able to concisely and articulately communicate the things that are important to you and to your son or daughter, and to be able to do so with the local area office, so that they have a better understanding of where you're coming from and what's important to you. And it also provides you an opportunity, having written it down, to be able to have gotten some ideas, through this process, and to really be able to have that vision available and written down. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is just a simple tool, another simple tool we provide to families. This is just 4 pieces. This is just a piece of paper divided in 4. So you have family, friends, community, and paid professionals. I offer this up, we offer this up as kind of a relationship map, right? So relationships open up doors of opportunity, right? John wouldn't have been able to do the hot dog cart if his parents and he weren't able to go out and to network. So, you take a piece of paper, you divide it in 4, and you start listing down who is our family? Who do we know? Who are my son's friends? Oftentimes, folks with disabilities come up short in the friends category, so that may be an area that needs some work. Who are the people in the community that we know? The fireman, the waitress. It doesn't have to be the CEO of the bank. The guidance counselor. These are folks who are well connected within their communities, and so being able to list who you know out there in the community is important. And then finally, paid professionals. Those are folks like myself or folks who work for, human services. But being able to understand the relationships and how you're connected to your community is really, really important, because, again, those relationships can open up doors of opportunities for jobs and homes, and being able to develop and find membership based upon your son or daughter's interests, etc. It's easy to be able to ask a human service worker to do things because that's what we're paid to do. It can sometimes be harder to ask Uncle Joe to do something, and you might not even want Uncle Joe in your living room. But it is important to have that courage to be able to ask folks whom you know, to be able to help them set a pick, or hear more about a particular job or career, or hear more about a particular interest in where your son or daughter might be able to join, et cetera, et cetera. So, being able to have this relationship map, understanding how you folks are connected into your communities, being able to have that those questions answered, and understanding the three things that are important to your sons or daughters and where you want to begin. It makes this process much more dynamic than just seeking services. And self-directed services are very dynamic. And so you have that written kind of assessment, so to speak, that you've crafted. You have an understanding of the relationships and who's in your son or daughter's life. And then you have the services, the self-directed services, and a way of being able to apply them, based upon the vision that you've developed, and based upon the relationships and the people who are in your life. It makes it much more of a dynamic process. And again, these are just kind of simple tools to start you off. Could you have the next slide? So these are the good things of life. We usually end the presentation with this slide. These were developed by a guy named Wolfensberger, who I had the pleasure of working with for a number of years before he passed. But I put this up there because it's important to understand, I think, that these are the things here: having a say, being welcome, belonging, respect, making a contribution. These are the good things of life that all human beings are looking to acquire and to obtain. And so it's true of your sons and daughters. This, ultimately, at the end of the day, the services that your son or daughter are receiving, they're strategies towards helping your sons and daughters try to obtain and acquire these things. These are the things that you're truly after. I think sometimes, especially in the turning 22 process, or when you're really looking at the service system, trying to acquire getting those services is important, but it's important to understand that those services are just a strategy towards helping your sons and daughters be able to have the things that all human beings are looking for, the good things of life. If the services that your sons and daughters are receiving aren't helping them to acquire these things here, then those services aren't working for you, and you need to kind of rethink your plan and rethink the strategy. And so we just offer these up as simple tools, the vision and being able to craft one, quickly and easily, understanding that the relationships in your lives matter and how you're connected matters, and that those relationships can open up tremendous opportunities and make magic happen, and to be able to be focused on the good things of life here, and understanding that these are the things at the end of the day that you're all chasing, that we're all chasing. And we very much appreciate your time and being able to listen to us and to talk about something we're passionate about. Here, this slide here is the latest information sessions. We do these on a quarterly basis. We publish this flyer, so it's also at the end of the PowerPoint as well. You can hear a more elongated version of our presentation upcoming in February and in March. And these are our contact information.
Yeah, awesome. Wow. You guys put a chock full of information and some great slides there. Thank you so much. I want to leave. We're going to go a little overtime today so people can ask some questions. And looking forward to that. And someone just said excellent PowerPoint, Ed and team. So great job, everybody.
let me just say also that at the bottom of this slide here that you're seeing is the link to the Self-Directed Services website at the for DDS. And when you click on that, you can see there are, I don't know, 5 or 10 minute story clips of how folks are, they're video clips of how folks are utilizing self-directed services, and we're hoping to post more of those as we go on, but those stories are important. So, and you can also find out more about self-directed services on that website.
So everyone's going to get this this PDF version of this PowerPoint. Literally, I'm hoping today. And I know, so you're going to get a copy. You are. So I'm answering your questions in advance. And if someone wants to type it in, I can't really. I'm having trouble copying. Oh no, I can do that. I can stop the share and grab the link and put it in the chat for people. They might want it. And oops, well, it's not cooperating. Okay. But anyway, there was a question Lucy asked about the amount of time it takes to, do the PDP a week. And I don't know if you can share that, have a sense. I know one parent, I asked someone who had like, I think, pretty intensive program. And she told me once it got started, just in terms of normal workload, it was 6 hours a week for her. But that's one person answering it. And that's the PDP with several staff, part-time staff that worked with her son. Do you guys want to comment on that question?
Yeah, Leo,
Yeah.
it's Pam. I'll jump in if that's okay. I think it really is a kind of a building of knowledge. And so when somebody first starts their program, they probably will be working a little more closely with their DDS support broker. So they'll, we'll demonstrate, we'll give examples, we'll kind of build people's information. And as you move along, it really does become quite simple. We have a lot of stuff that's available electronically in terms of the applications, in terms of credentialing the new staff and entering the timesheet. So there is a learning curve, but I think that most people will find that once you kind of build that foundation, it's less and less. But I would say at the beginning, probably, maybe 4 or 5 hours while we do the orientation and get into it, and then hopefully just an hour or so beyond that.
And the second question, before we get this last question that just came on, do you think there's a big difference when people do AWC, agency with choice, versus PDP in terms of time?
Well, so agency with choice is designed to be able to provide, more assistance to individuals and to families. That's the function of the agency. And you do have a navigator to be able to assist with those responsibilities. So it doesn't mean that agency with choice is, you're still supervising employees and having to develop that schedule and come up with those activities and such. So it really, it can depend on the person and how complex their needs are and what they're looking to try to accomplish. But I wouldn't say one is necessarily more time consuming than the other per se. You do receive some more assistance with agency with choice. But
I mean, I was going to say I could see some saving of time on the fringes, but given the workforce challenges that people face, right? I would think that's the same amount of work, right? And you may get more nurturance, like you said, more support. The other question somebody had was, here it is. If you qualify for, so this is a common question, traditional day program like CBDS, how does that translate in terms of the funding versus the hours of coverage, so to speak? And obviously, I'll help you with that. It's not apples and apples, it's apples and pears or oranges. So, you're not going to get the same number of hours, probably, not probably, for sure, but Ed or Amy or Pam or Jennifer, do you want to, I knew a Jean Benoit, so I keep wanting to call Jennifer Jean, but do one of you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, so I Yes, I've been called worse than Jean, so that's okay, Leo. No, it doesn't translate exactly the same because the services are very unique and they're different. So what you're getting with a CBDS program, like Ed had highlighted before, a traditional program, the agency's answering those questions. In the self-directed services, agency with choice and PDP, it's the participant, the family member answering those questions. It's all about them. It's that one-on-one service. So it doesn't translate 30 for 30 hours. It's going to be less than that because it is more of a costly service when it's delivered one-on-one in your home or in your community or the setting of your choice that you want that to be. It's not an exact formula. It's something that you work with your area office to come up with based on the need and the vision and the unique circumstance that you're in. And that's a conversation that you have with your area office.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then I think Liz was saying the dates, maybe the new sessions aren't listed yet on the website. So just FYI, you might, and I know you guys, do you control that one? Probably not. You don't control that one either. Yeah, so just so you know, years ago, I think it was under Mitt Romney, I'm trying to remember when it happened, they took away each agency's sort of, professional handle their website. So it does go through more of a centralized kind of thing. So hopefully that can get updated. But we'll be sending this out. But you're right, Liz, other people probably might stumble on it. Okay, so this is a sharpshooter question. It's from Kathy. It's the whole thing about what could you say about the 24-hour self-directed home sharing service that's possible under the intensive supports waiver? So for people, does that tie into this? And obviously, it's a little different, right? It's for people who are prioritized, I assume, for residential, number one, correct?
Yeah, I would just, at its very surface, it's very difficult to craft a 24/7 plan under our self-directed programs. We have caps and limits and guidelines we have to fall under, and it becomes very complicated, and it's kind of prohibitive to be able to do so. If that's a need that your son or daughter has, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but I can't underline it enough. Talk to your area office, talk about what the need is, talk about what you're looking for, and maybe it's a bigger team conversation of some brainstorming, because I know we're not in typical times right now. So I think brainstorming and thinking outside of the box is really the best approach.
So what I know that people do, Jennifer, is they have first, like those that are eligible for PCA, that's like a big block, right? To partner with the DDS dollars, right? And that sometimes is really a great pathway, I think, probably for packaging something like that together. Others might use AFC. It's not as robust, so that's a little different, right? And it depends on the nature that like you said, then you get into the weeds and you really think about the vision that Ed was referencing and all that, and you build from there, right? That's always number one, too. Someone asked about, Carrie asked about, can AWC provide the scope and number of hours that a medical-based day program would? Day programs with nursing are not accepting referrals. Yeah, so that's true right now, right? We're having more of a barrier for people with behavioral or complex medical needs if they turn 22, and that's been a real challenge. So I guess that's part of the negotiation, right? They're probably getting funded at a higher rate, depending upon where they are. And I know you said it's not apples to apples, the funding transfer, you have to talk it over, but you would build a plan, right, and vision. And what else could you say to that? I know I'm answering part of the question, but.
Well, there's no nursing services as part of either agency with choice or the participant-directed program, nor would there necessarily be personal care attendant services, where we're attending to folks' bodily needs, right? So these are home and day supports. We're talking about skill building and such. We do have an adult companion service that's less about skill building and more about, oftentimes folks who are highly medically needy or maybe bedbound, et cetera, are having somebody come in and they're reading with them, they're spending time with them. Or maybe it's somebody who's going out to the movies with someone, but not necessarily engaged in skill building. But building a medical component in either agency of choice or participant directed program, we could kind of subsidize the nurse. We could kind of have individual day or home supports along with some nursing services, but we wouldn't be able to provide those services directly.
So Carrie, I'm going to suggest that I think you're in Jennifer's area. I don't remember anymore how the regions break down in the South. So I used to know that. I know it changed a couple times when I was down there. So, but I think it's Jennifer, not Ed. That's your contact, Carrie. And I would follow up for her because Carrie feels like she's in a double bind with the PCA program, not allowed to provide certain kind of care, right? And then the Mass Health never approves enough. I say never. That's Leo editorializing Mass Health's approval of nursing hours. So it's never enough. So, so I just want to, especially if it's daytime, right, Carrie? Because they'll say, "Hey, that's a daytime thing. It's a work or a day program thing." But I would still try to get more hours for Mass Health on that nursing. That's for sure. But there is a potential of that being, I guess, a contracted service, whether there'd be enough money or how much nursing's necessary, right, for your son. I guess that would have to play out. And then Janice Hughes asked, community gathering for those in self-direction, if 3 self-directed folks, this has come up a lot. So let's say 3 people want to pool their money and they want to do a music program or they want to do an art program, whatever it might be, but it's, pooling the money together. So it's a social self-directed program. And I bet I know the answer, but why don't one of you say the answer? So pooling money, so 2 or 3 people.
Go ahead. So self-directed services are designed, and the services themselves are waiver-billed, but they're meant to be one-on-one, right? So you couldn't have one person be paid to support 3 people, right? That isn't to say that a person couldn't, go out with friends out to a concert or out to the movies, et cetera, and that support worker couldn't take a couple of friends out with them. But when it comes to the actual payment, or that particular worker is working for John, not necessarily Ann and Sally, and so it's more of a one-to-one kind of a.
It is. You just gave an example of sort of how you can figure it out, though. And the other thing I want to say is, if people want to get involved on this issue in terms of budget authority, which is something that there's a group called Mass Alliance, MA21, Mass Alliance for 21st Century Policy. Feel free to email me or Kathleen Amaral, and it's, in her case, it's KAMARAL at arcmass.org. But you can even email what's on the website, which is arcmass@arcmass.org. We can introduce you to that and also get you, well, we're going to send you the PDF. So you're going to get this no matter what, the dates of the trainings and stuff and the contact information for each of the trainers. It's almost one. So I just want to say, you guys are a font of knowledge. I loved your slides. I really can't say enough about how you presented and how accessible it was. And I don't know if there's any final things you want to say or would like to share before we call it a session.
Thanks for having us. Oh, go ahead, Amy, go ahead.
We're so eager to talk. We're talking over each other. Yeah, thanks for having us. And I also just wanted to emphasize, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We welcome, questions. If you'd like to talk more, we can connect you with people and all of the above. So thanks.
All right, great. All right, have a great week, everybody. Next week, it's Tim Sindelar talking about don't fall into the MCAS trap and graduate early. And he's going to have some tips on that, and look forward to that. And I think this was great. Thank you very much. Have a great week, everybody. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.